broken and I will never be fixed. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The lingering thoughts won't leave and I don't know what to do anymore. You hurt me, and now I'll forever be dirty. I can never be clean again. Traumacore is a disgusting mockery of trauma victims. It is dangerous and wrong, and it should not exist. This is the kind of opinion you will most likely find if you search for Traumacore right now. But is that even true? My name is Juno, your local Mothman. Welcome to my aesthetic deep dive series in which I analyze internet aesthetics while making art inspired by them. And today's video is about one of the most controversial and mysterious aesthetics, Traumacore. The goal of this video is to create a healthy discussion about this very difficult topic, and to answer questions that I've had since I stumbled across Traumacore many years ago. Why does this exist? What does it mean? Is it dangerous? To address those questions, we first need to answer a more challenging one. What is Traumacore? I don't know, or at least I'm not sure. I mean, the answer seems obvious at first. Traumacore is an aesthetic. It has its own wiki page and it uses the popular suffix core. It even has a visual guideline and themes. Everything you need in order to classify as an aesthetic. But calling this just an aesthetic doesn't sit right with me. There is something more to this. There is a reason why it's controversial but not hated. But let me show you how different Traumacore is from other aesthetics by comparing Traumacore to its predecessor, Morute. Morute is this soft, hyper-feminine aesthetic started by incredibly talented musical artist Nicole Dollenganger. And just like the name suggests, the aesthetic combines morbid things with cuteness. A girl in pink dress holding a knife, a bloody teddy bear, soft Catholic symbolism, creepy-chan, pastel pinks mixed with gothic Americana. Morute is pretty clearly an aesthetic, and nothing more than that. Now, let's compare it to Traumacore. A Traumacore image is usually a slightly desaturated photograph of something reminiscent of childhood, like a young child's bedroom, swings, toys, or a school classroom. Then on top of that picture, there are stickers of Sanrio characters, images of angels, or things we generally associate with children, but especially little girls. But wait, Traumacore doesn't always look like this. It can also look like this, or this, or this. That's because I believe that while Traumacore does have popular visual themes like the Sanrio characters, in the end, the only thing that makes an image Traumacore is that we get dropped into the perspective of a victim. We get tiny snippets of their thoughts and feelings, but we never see or get exact descriptions of what happened. We can only assume. Then there's the text. "You ruined me," reads one post. "I don't remember, but my body won't forget. It's my fault." Another repeats, "Useless," over and over again. Some apologize. "I'm sorry, I'm not good enough." Others beg, "Please stop. Stop touching me. Stop touching me. Stop touching me." That's why, no matter what Traumacore looks like, it cannot be classified as just an aesthetic, and why so many people cannot stand it. What is Traumacore? Traumacore is a dangerous, disrespectful internet trend. An article on ED Times reads, "As soon as we hear the word trauma, we associate severe mental and physical pain with it, but the millennials have given this term yet another angle. Delving into the theme of abuse, mental, physical, spiritual, Gen Z has glorified trauma to an extreme level. To cut the backlash and hide the blatant glorification, childlike, angelic themes are used more often than not. This veils their revolting support of abuse and trauma. Another poster on Quota asks, "Is Traumacore okay? I've always felt that it romanticizes things like mental illness and abuse." While researching this video, I've seen many opinion pieces that share a similar sentiment, and you guys also shared some of your concerns with me in the survey I posted. I think that it can be cool, but I don't partake because I'm really not a fan of the amount of SA and SH and just harm endorsement I've seen. Like, I saw something once that just repeated, "You should cut today," with no trigger warnings. Other disapproving opinions I encountered are ones of concern that due to the triggering nature of Traumacore posts, people, instead of getting help, engage even more with the not so healthy coping mechanism of sharing their vulnerable feelings with the internet for some form of validation. If the person only consumes Traumacore related content, it stops being a coping mechanism and turns into a triggering bubble, meaning that the person is unable to recover. And that if an unprepared person stumbles across a Traumacore post, it can end up being dangerous. Traumacore sometimes romanticizes these traumas, such as EDs and SH, and makes them seem cute or quirky. It can also be harmful if people see these images without wanting to, and it could potentially trigger them, which has happened in the past to me. But once again, I cannot help but feel like there is more to this. You guys also seem to agree with me, since only 1% of you define Traumacore as just a dangerous trend. It seems that you, just like me, cannot in good faith look at some of these posts and agree that they were made with malicious intent. This time, let's actually answer the question, what is Traumacore? I think that Traumacore is many things to many people, and the results of the survey tell us as much. 1/5 of the participants chose to define Traumacore themselves rather than choosing one of the options I suggested. But over 50% of you think that Traumacore is a coping mechanism. One person summed it up beautifully. Traumacore is an aestheticized art form that helps people like me feel less alone. Let me explain why I think that this person hit the nail on the head by asking you one question. How do we talk about trauma? We don't. And if we do, it's a joke. It's funny when it happens to people we don't like. It's a great bonding moment to quickly slip in an overly revealing joke to get a couple of non-committal chuckles and a pat on the back. Or it's an inspirational story about how people can overcome any tragedy. Who cares if what happened was terrible if you're now the image of success? Or it's an excuse. Your Honor, he killed that woman because he had an abusive mother. Of course, you should talk about your trauma, no one tells you not to, but only in appropriate places with appropriate people. During your incredibly expensive therapy session preferably, but not with people close to you. You wouldn't want to bother them with that, would you? On the internet we have coined the term trauma dump, and it has many negative connotations. Even though the definition describes trauma dumping as oversharing without the other person's consent or during inappropriate times, there seems to be no appropriate time to talk about trauma, unless it's with a detached medical professional. And so there is one last resort, one last way to escape the clutches of self-censoring doubt and ridicule. Art. But just because something is art, it doesn't mean that we should dismiss the valid concerns and criticism it receives. Over 75% of you believe that Traumacore can be harmful, so let's analyze Traumacore in its full, broken, unperfect glory. And maybe by the end of the video, we will find answers to our questions. I started this video with the least problematic and most obvious issue, the name itself. Traumacore. An artist that makes Traumacore art shared that I don't like to use the word traumacore because core indicates that it's an aesthetic. Trauma is not an aesthetic. Saying that traumacore isn't an aesthetic might be confusing to some people since most of the popular traumacore imagery looks similar, but I think that this person identified the core issue. The suffix core creates a communication problem of sorts. Because of it, traumacore falls under the internet aesthetics umbrella it cannot escape. Even if I and most participants would classify traumacore as an example of therapeutic modern art, so why use the term traumacore to post your art? Why do people keep using that name? Well, I believe it's because of the community. What do you do if you're suffering and there's nobody to validate you? What if you still live with your abuser, or if you're completely alone? What if help is inaccessible to you for one reason or another? What do you do then? You go on the internet. As I lurked in Traumacore forums, the subreddit and tags, instead of a hateful, dangerous community full of people inspiring each other to spiral further down and harm themselves, what I found was actually pretty surprising. The community seemed wonderfully supportive and interested in each other's stories and creations. There were some recovery posts and strict rules as to what is appropriate and what was not. If somebody posted an event, you could enter the comments and find an outpour of concern and support and camaraderie, people sharing their own experiences and thoughts, and I think that's so incredibly important. That feeling of belonging and getting to have a space to talk about the awful parts of life is crucial to recovery and emotional regulation. This is an aspect of Traumacore I don't see other people mention in their discussions. As one person noticed, Traumacore can be a way to find people who relate to a certain traumatic experience and maybe even a cry for help. That's why I believe the name Traumacore stayed even as the community outgrew its Marut roots. And the community doesn't even stop at just sharing visual art, but it also extends to discussing media like film and animation together, or enjoying curated playlists, which, by the way, scrolling through the musical artist list on Wiki and seeing a bunch of my favorite artists was an experience. So here are some of my, I guess, Traumacore related music recs for you. Obviously, it is also concerning to me that people share such intimate parts of themselves with the internet. It can go horribly wrong, after all. The internet is not a nice place, and I've seen some participants complain that their art and edits get reblogged by kink blogs that do glorify, sexualize, and romanticize the trauma. And I think that might be the main reason why these communities exist, to protect each other from outside instigators. But can the community protect each other from itself? Words and symbolism have meaning. I know it, you know it. We also both know that the meaning and impact of a piece changes drastically depending on the context. The author might have had one vision in their head, but the audience interprets it completely differently. And what if the intent of the piece seems to be to purposefully trigger dark memories for an unclear reason? And what if the audience didn't consent to seeing such triggering content? Here we run into the biggest issue with Traumacore, and that is, where is the line? This question plagues the online discussions because the boundary as to what is okay to explore and how seems to be very subjective. When I asked the survey participants how they took part in Traumacore, many of them create things, drawings, edits, songs, poetry. One person shared that they are working on a game. They make art, and when it comes to art, there are usually no clear answers. Is it an artistic description or romanticization? True-to-life expression or dangerous material? Unnecessary voyeurism or storytelling device? Where is the line? It's a very difficult question to answer. We do have examples from popular media how to handle difficult topics, but even that isn't perfect. Many officially published pieces of art, like movies, games, and songs, often get accused of possibly inspiring people to spiral further. But I wonder, should there at all be a line you don't cross? The way we talk about trauma cannot be just clean and all about recovery. If we strip the conversations and art of its rawest pieces, we're sanitizing a topic that already doesn't have much space to breathe. What I'm saying is that yes, Sanrio stickers next to TSA innuendos are a valid artistic expression. Just because something has a cuter or a softer aesthetic doesn't inherently take away from its themes. The visual confusion is done on purpose, the same way some musical artists use happy-sounding chord progressions while talking about very upsetting topics, with the most popular example of that being Hey Ya by Outkast. Hello Kitty is next to a harrowing quote on purpose to make you feel uncomfortable. Traumacore mostly relies on continuously representing and artistically recreating traumatic moments. It is understandably too much for some people, but for people that create Traumacore, that feeling of being overwhelmed seems to be the point. But why do that? Why emotionally go back to such difficult times? This self-triggering is actually nothing new. There is this incredible article about self-triggering by the Department of Psychology of Harvard University, and I highly recommend you read it. In this article, they draw a comparison to non-suicidal self-injury. Due to the numbing of emotions that often occurs after trauma, self-triggering might be an attempt to snap yourself out of dissociating, or to alleviate feelings of guilt via self-punishment. Same could be said about romanticization. It is also an unhealthy coping mechanism people fall into due to lack of resources. When you romanticize your pain, you're giving it meaning. Something small yet positive, when in reality, there is no honor or meaning to suffering. It just happens. But if psychologically some of these damaging aspects of Traumacore make sense, does that make them okay? Throughout this video, the word therapeutic kept coming up. Some people in the survey referred to Traumacore as a form of unofficial therapy, and art therapy has been researched and is a great supplement to actual therapy. I am not qualified enough to make an assessment whether or not Traumacore is a valid form of art therapy, but I can pretty confidently tell you that Traumacore is art. That's why I disagree with the unnecessary demonization of Traumacore participants. Of course, criticism is absolutely warranted, but attributing malicious intent is misplaced in my opinion. I think it's really important to remember that people suffering from self-destructive behaviors are capable of empathy, and on average, unless they're in a terribly dark place, would never wish their suffering on other people. That's why I believe that the biggest issue with Traumacore is the internet. Throughout this conversation about the issues, the two main things that repeat are the issue of unclear intent and the issue of consent, which means that a conversation boils down to three things: art, censorship, and internet etiquette. When I sit down in front of a blank page today, I still remember the conversation I had with my mom when I was 14. I was already struggling with depression and missing school, and I didn't know how to explain that to my best friend. And my mom told me, "Your emotions are yours to deal with. You don't have the right to burden others with them." I never told my friend about my feelings. We haven't talked in years. When I draw something that expresses my feelings that I can't put into words, I keep those art pieces close to my chest. I never post them online. I don't talk about my mental health on this channel, and whenever I post a video, I feel like because it's 100% my creation, I expose myself to the world, and that's terrifying. So you can imagine my envy and other feelings that arise in me when I see others express themselves so honestly through art, loudly showing the parts that we were repeatedly said to be quiet about, exposing the darkest, rotten pieces of themselves for the internet. In that context, the idea of censoring Traumacore upsets me. And on the other hand, I understand why we need to be careful. My mom wasn't completely wrong in her reasoning. When we share difficult things, we need to take into account how that might affect the people around us. Of course, in an ideal world, people could express themselves however they want and only reap positive benefits, while the people who could be harmed and those that don't understand would leave them alone. But this is the internet. Things don't work like that here. People can create Traumacore images for fun, even though they have no trauma to speak of. They can find someone posting Traumacore and use that to their advantage to manipulate them. Some may stumble across a Traumacore image and accidentally trigger an episode, but censorship and shaming isn't the answer. By banning and repressing Traumacore, we are doing nothing to combat what created that art in the first place. Censorship won't stop trauma from being inflicted on people. It won't stop people from being triggered by things on the internet. It will not stop the glorification and romanticization of mental illness. All that it will do is take away a form of expression from people that desperately need it. My only conclusion is that using appropriate hashtags that can be easily muted on Tumblr, appropriate moderation on the subreddit, and adding trigger warning to your posts is the best way to prevent random, unprepared people from stumbling across something potentially triggering. In the end, we're all responsible for our own conduct online and how we engage with media. I think it's important to listen to the people involved in the community, and what I have seen so far is that Traumacore helps them. Creating these posts helps them regulate, which is so important when you're suffering from a mental illness that can cause you to be a danger to yourself. I don't think that I have the right to say that what they are doing is wrong. But what do you think? Please let me know in the comments down below. And while you're down there, make sure to subscribe for more aesthetic analysis and other deep dives into niche internet subjects. I am trying to get to 20,000 subscribers. If you liked my coverage on the subject and like my channel at least a little bit, you can consider joining my Patreon for $1.50, where I post weekly updates, art, time lapses, as well as exclusive videos. Thank you for everything. Please stay safe. Bye bye.